Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. I always scroll the internet to look for nice clothing to recreate, and quite some time ago I saw on Lulu's channel a two-piece a sweater with a skirt, and I always screenshot it and I keep that then, and when I want to make something new I just scroll through my pictures and see what to make. So for this week's and next week sewing class, we're gonna make a two-piece. This video will be the skirt, next week's video will be the sweater, and I have this really beautiful fabric. I don't know if you can see it because I think it's a bit too bright, but it's a beige, a little bit grayish knitted fabric with a faded darker gray stripes going across, and you hardly see the gray stripes, but it gives a little bit of depth into the fabric. You know, it looks really nice. It is rather flowy. I already cut some off so I don't have the whole piece, but it's a rather thin flowy knitted fabric, so it's very nice to use this for this two-piece, because we can also wear that then in spring and maybe even in summer. So it's not really a wintry thing, but it's a bit of an all-season thing. So I will show you what we're gonna make out of this. And this was my inspiration. I saw it on Lulu's website. And it is a two-piece that is a wrap skirt, but the wrap is attached at the waistband. We make an elasticated waistband, but it looks really nice like this. It's just a straight on watertight skirt, and then we make a matching top that also has a wrap in the front, also attached to the, I don't know what it's called in English, the trim or the bottom of the top. We sew that on, so we make it just of the same fabric as the rest of the top is, and also some wider sleeves, well at least wider on the bottom of the sleeves, that we can make cuffs, and you can choose if you want to make rather large cuffs, high cuffs, or just the normal smaller cuffs, whatever you prefer. So it's a wrap in the top and a wrap in the skirt, and I thought it was really nice. And when you make this out of a knitted fabric, then it's really comfortable piece to have. So for the pattern for the skirt, you will need your basic pattern for a skirt, and I will link it up here and down in the description box, where you can get your basic pattern for a skirt, where you can make it yourself to your own sizing and body type. We take that, and you can make a new pattern for this skirt, but because the adjustments are so simple that I just make my adjustments directly onto my fabric. Because what we're going to do is we're not going to use this dart, and what I did, this is the front pattern. And what I already did on my pattern, because usually I don't use this dart, I marked where I have to cut my side seam if I don't use my dart. So I cut it off like that. Then in the mid front we need some extra fabric for the wrap. And what I do is I take half the measurement of my front here, and I add that here to the mid front. And then I want a little bit more extra, because I want to make my hem a little bit wider than normally. Normally I would do 1 centimeter, 1 centimeter, but now I want it a little bit more, like 2 centimeters in, because I want to make some embellishment here on the edge. And you can do the 2 if you like. If you don't, then just take half the measurement of your pattern and add that to your mid front plus seam allowance. Then make sure you have the right length, because my basic pattern is for a shorter skirt. I want mine now very long, so measure how long you want it and cut that off. And that is the whole part for your front pattern. And then for the back is even more simple, because it is just your basic pattern. I'm not going to use my darts, so I cut off here on the side seam about these amounts. You can also just fold your pattern in, and then your side seams goes to the right place, but it doesn't have to be precise. Just cut a little bit more off. As you see, my pattern ends here. I cut more off and go down to your hip, where the pattern of your hip is. Make it of course on the fold, and make sure your length is okay. And then you have the patterns for your skirt. The only thing that you have to cut is your waistband, and where's my elastic? And what you do, make sure you have some wider elastic. Mine is 2 centimeters wide. I prefer a more wider one, but I ran out of that one, so I'm going to use this one. And then you cut a rectangle out of your fabric that is double the width of your elastic, because we're going to fold it double, of course, plus seam allowance, and the length will be your waist measurement. So just one long rectangle of your fabric for the waistband, for the casing, for the elastic. So what we're going to do now is we're first going to finish the front, so the edge of the wrap. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in 1 centimeter and then fold it in 2 centimeters, so that I have a bit of a wider hem. And I do that because you saw in the picture they had more of a whipped edge, a whipped border. But because we cannot knit this ourselves, we have just the same fabric everywhere, I like to make some embellishments here. So I'm going to pin this down the whole end, and then what I'll do, I'll flip it to the right side. Of course I sew that down here on the edge. I'll flip it to the right side, and I want to make some kind of a zigzag pattern like this. Just sewing to the edge and I'm back, do and back, do and back. I tried it all on a piece of scrap to see if I needed to put some interfacing in between, because I was afraid that if I was going to make that, this would stretch out and it would really be crooked. But fortunately the fabric had no problem with that, so I'm not going to put some interfacing in between. But if you try it out and your fabric won't do it like that, then just put some piece of interfacing just on this part, of course on the inside, but on where you want to make your stitching, so that this cannot stretch out or move or whatever. And just a small strip of that 2 centimeters, you iron it on here on the inside of your hem, let's call it a hem. What I noticed is when you make that zigzag, I wanted to go just over the edge, because then you don't see the end of it and I'm going back to the stitching here and I'm going over the edge. But when you do that, it will, at least my fabric will cinch it in a bit, and that doesn't look nice. So I go just to the edge of the fold here and then going back. It's a bit less nice, I think, but it gives the best result. If you don't like that, you can also just go to the end and then cut your fabric, thread off, and then hand knot it and put it inside of your fabric. Then you have your stitching going over the edge, but you don't have to go back, because the problem is when you go back it pulls a bit on the fold here, and that's not nice. So, or you just put your needle to the end just before the fold and then go back, or you go over, cut your threads, hand knot, and with a needle just push them back into this hem. Then you get a nice result too, but I think that's a bit too much work, so I'm not going to do that. So that's what I'm going to do. If you don't like that, just hem your front parts and then you're done with that. Of course also for the left pattern, but there you don't really need some embellishment, because that is the part that's going under, and only on the bottom part of the skirt you might see it, but I don't think I'll make the embellishment there. But I thought for the right part that will be very nice to have. Couldn't mark my zigzag with a fabric marker because it doesn't pick on here on my fabric. So what I did is I marked what my aiming point was for every zigzag. So I'm gonna sew to this point, then to that point, to that point, to that point, and then I'll make my whole zigzag here on the side of the white front pattern. I made my two mid fronts. I don't know if you can see it, but I made here this wavy effect with the stitching. I will zoom it in later on, then maybe you can see it better. First I did it with a thread that was more this color, but you really didn't see anything, and I wanted you to see also the thread, not just the fabric that gives that wave, but also the thread. So I did it now with a darker grey, more like the stripes in it. So now you can maybe see here the wavy stitching. I don't know if it's more visible now, but then if not, just believe me, it looks really nice. It has something special, and maybe I can make a close-up when I'm wearing it, then I can show you. But it's very subtle, but it gives a little bit more to that edge that will be facing out when you wear it. So I really like to give that something. Now we're gonna attach the back pattern to the front. So place the back one right sides together on top of the front pieces, and then sew both your side seams and just line them up and sew them down. So both the side seams. The skirt is nicely together. I put my wrap right part over left, and what you can do when you try it on and you think it is opening up too much here on the bottom, you can just take your left pattern a little bit up here on the top and then pin them together for sewing on your waistband. So you see here I just made it 1 centimeter higher here, then it doesn't fall open that much, because when it's going way too more up, it is not comfortable to wear. So pin your two front pieces over each other, matching up the mid front part, and then you have some options. You have your waistband, and what you can do is you can fold it just together. I have to cut off these threads because they're really annoying me. So you can fold them together, right sides together. Of course, first close up the circle so that you have just one continuous circle, and then sew that down, but leave a little gap on the facing part, so on the inside part of your waistline, so that you can fit in your elastic later on. So close up that circle, then put them one sides together, mark where your middle is, and pin that to the middle of your skirt. And then you can just pin this circle all around the top of your skirt, and then in the same time you sew your right and your left front part together, so then the wrap is closed up like this. And then you have attached your waistband. You can fit in your elastic, sew that down at the right size, and then your waistband is done. What I'm going to do, because my fabric is rather thin, it is not see-through, but it is so thin that you can see everything you wear underneath it, and I don't really like that. I'm going to line it partially. And what I did, I took some lining fabric, I just laid it underneath my skirt, and I marked where the side seams were. I sewed down the side seams, so now I have exactly the same shape as my skirt had. I already marked till where I want my lining to be. I hem it later, because then when I try it on with my skirt I can see till where I should make my hem. And then you have just a very easy lining. So what I'm going to do the waistband a little bit different. I sew one part of my waistband to the top of my lining skirt, and when I've done that I'm going to sew the other part to the top of my skirt. And then when I flip the other part of the waistband where the lining is attached inside out, I have my lining inside my skirt, so I'll show you when I have attached it how I do that. It's very simple, but then in a very easy way you have lined your skirt, and the only thing you have to do what I always like to do is here stitch in the ditch, sew the waistband close so that you have really that casing, and also have more your lining secured to your skirt. And you have to sew it here somewhere because you need that casing for your elastic. And I'll always do a stitch in the ditch because you don't see that stitching, and I like that more. So that's what I'm gonna do. If you don't have a lining, just fold your waistband together, sew it on, and I'll do my lining part. I will film that part because that maybe is more difficult for some people. This of course is very simple to do, and then you can see how you can line it. And then your skirt is almost done. Then the only thing we have to do is hem the bottom, and that's all there was to it. Attach now my waistband to my lining. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pin my waistband to my skirt, and I do that by flipping my skirt inside my lining, making sure that I have the back to the back of my skirt. I have to mark my mid front first to line it up well. Like that, and then I'm gonna pin my lining and my waistband and my skirt together. The skirt, nice and comfortable piece, very easy to wear and very easy to make. As you saw, I made that wavy pattern here in the front line. I really like it, so I think I'm going to do that too here for the top next week. Next week we're going to make the top, so then you will have the two piece together. And well, for this one, it was a really nice one. It was nice to make. I made a lining, but you certainly don't have to do that. The down part thing is sometimes you will see here the edge of your lining, and I don't really like that. So when you line it, just do it because you need to, otherwise I would leave it out, although it's not difficult to do, as you saw. So, but this is, I think, a very comfortable piece. You don't have to always wear sweatpants. A skirt like this is also very comfortable, and you can put a pin in here if you're afraid that your web will open up too much. Just put a little safety pin here at the end, and it will stay closed, and you don't have problems with that. So I hope you liked this tutorial. I'll see you again next week for the sweater, And if you have any questions, as always, leave them down below in the description box and I'll get back to you. And I will link down below in the description box next week's video when it's up, so that when you have seen this video, you can very easily go to that other video of the sweater. You don't have to search around in my video box. So I'll see you again next week for the sweater. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.